У два МЛХШ. Два. Получилось. Так.
Как можно такого найти?
То, что я сейчас показал, я делал много раз на соревнованиях. Но то, что я приготовил дальше, я буду делать перед живой публикой впервые в жизни. Мне понадобится мой BMX.
Pate, kaj često?
Da be ošte. Ne.
Ника, я попрошу вас еще раз перемешать кубик.
Od njih sjaka.
Сейчас я попробую сделать то же самое, но во время езды на велосипеде. Это означает, что в какой-то момент я надену повязку на глаза и не смогу видеть, куда я перемещаюсь по сцене.
Un predstave.
Спасибо.
Рома, не надо сделать это.
Знайка, кровь на прическе. Бухло. Ну, честно, бухло. Все. Знайка, кровь на прическе. Знайка. Кровь на прическе. Бухло. Бухло. Бухло.
So I want to share with you guys my experience of how I got to Bulgarian Got Talent and pulled out the hardest, craziest trick I've ever done in front of live audience. That is, I was riding a BMX blindfolded backwards and I managed not to fall off the stage. And I also solved the cube at the same time. So that's undoubtedly like the biggest accomplishment of mine in my entire like cubing career, because compare that to any of my previous challenges, like what were they exactly? Doing the reverse blind solve while sitting in a comfortable chair? Come on, that didn't even include the risk of falling off the stage and breaking your back or something. I had to consider so many things, and this is how the journey began. So I've been cubing for over 10 years now, and the blindfold itself was always the most fascinating part of it, because what's the purpose of solving the cube with your eyes open? Like, you can see everything, it's not even interesting. And I also have a million other different hobbies, including some extreme sports and riding the BMX, which I started in 2008, I believe. I can't do any crazy stuff on BMX, like the backflip or front flip, the way I do on trampolines, but I can do some cheap tricks, like riding the bicycle backwards to the point where I do not need my hands to control the bike. And so the idea of combining those two things, like riding the bike backwards and solving the cube blindfolded, came to me in about 2014. And I tried that for a couple of times. I needed a lot of space and I failed a lot of times until eventually I got it. And I uploaded the YouTube video. It got some comments and got some comments on the speed solving forum. And basically that's it. I've forgotten about the trick. I just added this to my like challenges collection. Fast forward 2020, I was invited to one talent show in Russia where the guys asked me to do something that you have never done before for television. And I thought I can do that. I didn't really think of the stage size for that matter, so I just started to practice outside. I bought my BMX specifically for that. Probably you've seen some of the YouTube videos that I've uploaded. Unfortunately, the talent show never took place for me, so I just forgot about it again. But I made a few videos of me solving the 4x4 and then the 5x5 cube blindfolded, which was pretty cool. And then 1 year later, I got another invitation, this time to a Bulgarian talent show, and I decided to finally try this for real. I have requested the stage size and they sent me that, and I drew this oval on the asphalt, the same size as the stage, and I looked at it like, oh my god, that is so small. I can't do it, it's impossible. At that time, I have a realization that I just committed to do something that I truly don't think is going to be possible to do. I would memorize the cube, hardly staying inside that area, and then I would put on my blindfold, and a couple of turns of the cube later, that's it, I'm out of bounds. The worst thing was, the more I have concentrated to staying inside the zone, the slower I was solving the cube blindfolded, and the slower I was solving the cube, the more time I've been spending blindfolded, having completely no idea where I am inside that area. And that's an ultimate DNF. So long story short, I quickly realized that if I'm gonna do this for real, I would have to solve the cube blindfolded so much faster. But here's the problem. My algorithms for 3x3 blindfolded, let me take out my 5x5. So my algs for 3 blind were really inoptimal. That's because my main event for 10 years of competing on the WCA competitions was solving the 5x5 Rubik's Cube blindfolded, which is the hardest, well, I consider that to be the hardest event. At the time when I started to try that on comps, there were about 50 people on the planet who officially did it successfully. So I wanted to be one of those. And I found it really annoying to learn kind of different algs for the same elements. Both cubes have the edges. You can learn the same algs for them, or if you want to be both fast at 5 blind and 3 blind, you want to learn different alg sets for different cubes, which I found quite annoying, so I didn't do that. I decided to just learn optimal or fast algs for 5x5, and then for 3x3 I would use the same algs, although they would be slower on the 3x3. I don't think I'm even like top 100 people for 3x3 blindfolded, but that didn't matter because that wasn't my main event. But in order to solve the cube fast, I would have to relearn all the algorithms from the edges and the corners. And of course, that's a wonderful idea when you have like 2 months before the event, the performance, where you have to successfully solve the cube. And so that's exactly what I did. How do you even memorize that? Like, in which direction you have to... Some of the algs are so annoying, especially for these corner algs, that I don't like 3 blinds. What I'm trying to say is, learning how to solve a 3x3 blindfolded isn't that hard in my opinion, but when it comes to speed, 3 blind is
kind of complicated, but you know, that's life sometimes, I guess.
Fortunately though, I am a programmer. I made a program that let me drill the algorithms in the very efficient way. That is, if you have your cube solved, you are presented with 5 words and you have to execute the algorithms for these 5 words, one after another. And if you execute them correctly, you would get a solved cube. This is getting too technical. I'm just going to tell you how I was practicing. About 2 months before the Bulgarian Got Talent show, I decided to split my practicing intervals into 2 parts. The first one, I would just solve 3x3 blindfolded like normal at home, except I would not measure the memorization time. I would just measure the execution time, because the point is to minimize the amount of time that you are solving the cube, and that would minimize the amount of time you are blindfolded on the BMX. If that means that I would have to memorize the cube 2 times longer or 3 times longer, it wouldn't matter. And for the second part, I would just do solves on BMX outside. So that means I will first reinforce good algs and achieve high success rate with my 3x3 blindfolded, and then I'm gonna practice this on my BMX. And I have to say, I got a lot of inspiration from that guy, Elliot Kabilansky, because that was the first time I saw his video where he was talking about how he got twice as fast in 3 blinds in a month or something. So Elliot, if you're watching this video, thanks for the inspiration. Also, for my 3 blind practicing at home, I was able to write a program that would generate special scrambles for me. It knows my solving orientation, and that would guarantee that when I'm gonna memorize and solve the cube, in my solution, I would have at least 1 alg that I don't know very well in corners, and at least 1 alg in edges, and both corners and edges would not have any solved pieces. Basically, the scrambles were guaranteed not to be lucky, which would prepare me for the worst case scenario on Bulgarian Got Talent show if I got just really scramble. So after a month of practicing 3 blind at home and getting pretty confident with my success rate and my algorithms, it was finally time to move outside. And I would enter this little mini football box outside with my bike, and I would memorize the cube, put on my blindfold and do a couple of turns, and I would hit the fence every single time. It was just impossible. That was the time I realized, in order to have at least 50% chance that I'm gonna succeed on stage on Bulgarian Got Talent, I have to practice a whole freaking lot. It has to be at least every single day. Because I'm a full-time programmer, my only option was to practice during the lunchtime, because in the evening it was so dark outside I couldn't distinguish the colors on the cube. But every time I would go outside and do my first solve, I would be surrounded by the children who would say, "Oh my god, how are you riding the bicycle like this? Can you ride on your back wheelie? Can you do a backflip? What's that? It's the Rubik's Cube. Can you solve it?" Like, please, leave me alone and just give me some time to practice. After a few days of that annoyance, I realized my only option isn't to practice in the morning, is it?
You know, I wake up so early. You want to know how early I got up this morning? I woke up yesterday at noon, but like for today.
But yeah, nothing makes you more motivated to get up early in the morning other than your upcoming performance, and a little shell script for my Linux machine that would turn on the dubstep full volume on that thing if I would not press some certain key combinations on my keyboard, which, as you can guess, will make me stand up from my bed and approach my PC and press a few buttons, and at that point I basically already woke up. Every time I have a real-life problem, first thing I try is to solve it with programming, and it works 90% of the time. So there it was. Every single day I woke up at the same time, which already is something that I haven't done since school, and I went outside with my bike and with my cubes, and I started practicing solves, like every day, no exceptions, even on rainy days. Speaking of rainy days, specifically for that reason, I got some of the spare cubes, because every time I would come up after the rainy training, I would disassemble the cube in order to let all the pieces dry, and then I would use my spare cubes in order to practice at home. Another annoying thing about practicing outside is that even if you have a slightest elevation, you have to push your pedals so hard in order to get there backwards, and then when you start to accelerate from that surface, from that elevation, your bike starts to be uncontrollable, and so you don't, in order to make a turn, you first have to, like, what's that called? Brake? I don't have any brakes on my BMX, and I have to like insert my foot above the back wheel, which was the front wheel when I was sitting backward. But anyway, it was pretty hard. Yeah, also the butt hurt. That was quite literal. I had to wrap a little like rubber thing around my bar to make it a bit softer. Not something that a lot of people think about when they look at my performance. But yeah, I knew that it's gonna be challenging, and my success rate was growing. And I knew that every time it was above 70%, I would have to go on the next level. So I would use even harder scrambles to practice outside. I would stop warming my hands in between the solves because, it was freezing cold to the point where I couldn't move my fingers normally. And I realized I can use this to my advantage to make the conditions harder. Another thing that I would do is I would lower the pressure in my wheels in order to make the bike control more difficult. And of course, I would increase the amount of solves I do every day, because the more tired you get, the harder it is for you to solve, and the easier it is to get first solves on the next day. So as for the actual performance, I decided to make it a two-part show. The first part would just be solving the Rubik's Cube blindfolded, the way I would normally do this in the corporate events or the competitions, and only the second part would involve me riding a BMX. And the reason is, it seemed to me that if I'm just gonna perform on the BMX, people who are gonna watch this, obviously non-cubers, would seemingly not be able to just grasp of what's going on and what I'm doing. So to keep things simple, I thought I would just first solve the cube blindfolded and then do the same exact thing, but with the BMX involved. I thought it's just gonna be easier to understand for spectators. So it's time to go. I pack my bike, I pack my cubes, I get to the airport. They gave us the rehearsal day. I come on stage, I'm getting on my bike, and I instantly realize the conditions are going to be just perfect, because you don't have any elevation on the stage. The stage surface is just perfectly flat, and I can ride as slow as I can, having all the pressure in my wheels to perfectly control the bike on the stage. So the only thing left was just to solve the cube, which I can do pretty well. And I did 2 attempts on the rehearsal day to solve the cube on the BMX, and I failed both of the times. Oh my god, I was so disappointed in the hotel room that I decided to spend the next day practicing. Practicing in the hotel room was like, scrambling the cube and then going backwards and trying to imitate this backwards motion in the bicycle and memorizing the cube and then solving the cube while going, walking backwards blindfolded. And I also realized I did not memorize very well some of the algorithms, some of the most annoying ones in corners, like the one I do right now. No, that's the wrong one. See? It's the last day before the rehearsal, and I just tried to solve 3 blinds, and I found out I just cannot execute some of the algorithms from the new collection. So last day before the rehearsal, I literally just sit down and try to come up with some of the mnemonics for the algorithms that I'm struggling with. Not something that I have expected. By the way, the idea or the format of this show, the Bulgarian Got Talent or any Got Talent show, is slightly different than the format of the show I participated in 2017 in Russia. Because there, in the Amazing People, they give you the challenge. And you either complete the challenge or you fail. So if you fail the challenge, that might not be your fault. At least that's what spectators have to think. Because the challenge could just be too difficult for you. Or, beyond your competence or something. But in the Got Talent show, you prepare the challenge. You want to impress the judges. And you have to make a show. If you fail that show, if you do not perform according to your plans, that's completely your fault. And so last day before the performance, I realized I have to have a text for my performance. A very responsible of me. Last day I'm sitting and composing the text. I particularly remember one line that I came up with regarding what would happen if I fall off the scene. I came up with a joke that goes something like, if I fall off the scene, I would break the microphone and the television, have to buy another one, or something stupid like that. But it worked, actually. So the auditions day, we have arrived at the venue, we did interviews and everything. People asked me if I'm nervous or not, about which I have this mindset that I'm gonna perform with my cube in front of non-cubers and they'll be impressed regardless of what I'm gonna show. I can do the algorithm, I can undo the algorithm, and they're just gonna be impressed. If I will fall off the stage, this is gonna be epic. If I'm gonna solve the cube successfully, this is gonna be epic. So the only thing that I have to be concerned about is the DNF, which probably not gonna be so epic. So I went on stage, I said I can solve the cube and stuff, and they scrambled me the cube, and I started memorizing it, and of course, one of the cases for corners was one of these annoying ones where you have to at least at the time I didn't know the optimal algorithm for that, when you have to twist the R2 unpredictable amount of times. This is for my letter pair h, sh. And you can see that, I kind of hesitate because at that point I knew that's a 50% chance that I'm gonna DNF the solve. I felt like I would fail the first solve. I don't even know whether or not I'm allowed to ask for the second attempt, considering that the amount of time on stage is limited.
Да бе, още. Не.
Ника, я попрошу вас еще раз перемешать кубик. Я попрошу вас подойти к сцене, и когда я буду на велосипеде, подать мне кубик.
Моля, приближете се, Николаус, към сцената и когато съм на колелото...
So I got on my bike and Nika gave me the cube for the second time. I started memorizing the cube as I would normally do, except this time I had the microphone really close to my mouth and I didn't know they would record everything that I was mumbling.
Знайка, кровь на прическе.
They didn't broadcast the sound at the stage, at least not as loud as they did on the final editing, so I didn't know that they were recording me. And one of the words that you can clearly hear is
Бухло, бухло.
it's like a general term for all the alcoholic drinks, but in a very obscene form. So you can imagine what a surprise it was for my family to watch this for the first time online, and also for all of my friends who are not into blind and do not understand what's going on. On the other hand, I'm glad that the most obscene word was that one and not some of the other ones I have in my letter pair images system. This second scramble that I've got for my BMX solve was quite lucky actually. It was 5 edges and 4 corners, but I still had this tremor in my hands that did not allow me to solve easily. And I was so concentrated on making sure that I would start and finish the execution of every algorithm without being able to adjust my bike or something, that at one point I nearly forgot that I have to turn 180 degrees. Actually, I have committed to execute an algorithm, and only after finishing that algorithm I was concerned about actually making a turn, which was quite funny to watch then. Because that's the most difficult part, right? If you start executing any speed cubing algorithm that you only remember with your muscle memory, as soon as you are distracted, and then you come back to the cube to finish executing the algorithm, for me it's impossible to return and remember the state at which you have stopped. So I had to commit before starting executing any algorithm that I will finish doing it no matter what. So the first thing I felt when I took off my blindfold and saw a salt cube was such a relief that finally I have completed that, and then I overreact. See, the Bulgarian television has invited me to the show and I know exactly what they want in terms of content, and so when you have your real emotions and the emotions that you were prepared to demonstrate, you combine them together and they just multiply. So I overreacted, I cheered, I jumped off the stage, not sure exactly why I did this. It was kind of hard to control my emotions at that point. And honestly, I didn't even care what would the judges say, because that's not what I came for. Some people write in the comments of that YouTube video with my performance on the Bulgaria Got Talent YouTube channel that I deserve a golden button. Thanks a lot for that. I honestly don't know what is a gold button exactly and what it does and how the judges system work. The only thing that was important for me at the moment was that finally I have done my performance and achieved my goal that I set for myself. And of course I was happy that I entertained all of the people who were watching this, so that was a success. Recently they told me that I got to the next round, which is the semifinals, and I honestly have absolutely no idea of what I can perform in the semifinals, because obviously I can't think of anything that's gonna be like more crazy than that. If you have any ideas considering my skill set, then definitely let me know in the comments. I'll be glad to read about that and consider that. But chances are I will probably do some lame mosaic stuff or something. But anyway, I'm super happy with my performance and I wanted to share the experience of preparing for the talent show with you guys. I am reading your comments, I am reading your messages at Facebook. Thanks a lot for your support and we'll see you at the semifinals.